Hello, and welcome to another episode of Crowsdale Village's very own talk show, Know Your Neighbor. I'm your host, Caroline, from Life Enrichment. Every single person has a story that led them to where they are right now. When we meet someone, we are only seeing the current page. We want to encourage our community to take the time to sit down and learn about all the chapters. We want to pause and say thank you so much to everyone who has been tuning in to Know Your Neighbor. We've been touched by how many people have stopped us and said that they've learned more about their neighbors through this show than they ever knew before. In a year that has been marked by a high potential for loneliness and isolation, we are so pleased that we can help add a little bit more connection in this community. Speaking of creating connections between people here at Crowsdale, today's guest is a queen of connecting people. She is a warm, welcoming, sweet, and fun woman who is always bringing people together. She writes for The Chatter. She's a devoted member of the Armchair Naturalists Club and an avid walker and exerciser. She is a published author and is known for what she writes and what she wears. You'll have to ask about the pins she wears every day. Who is this wonderful woman I am raving about? I want to introduce my guest. Where is she? Gigi? Gigi, where are you?
Here I am.
Where?
Over here. I'm just putting on my Christmas trees.
Wait, what are you doing? You're putting on a Christmas tree?
Yeah.
What? Here she is, my sweet Gigi, my friend Gloria Glenn.
Hello, everybody.
I see what you mean about putting on your Christmas trees. Your glasses look fabulous. What does the pin say today?
The pin says, "Be naughty, save Santa a trip."
Be naughty and save Santa a trip. Well, here she is, my guest, Gloria Glenn. I am so happy that I convinced her to sit down with me for this interview. Not only because she's one of my favorite people with a very interesting story, but also because this is a unique way to celebrate your birthday. When is your birthday?
December the 26th.
The day after Christmas.
The day after Christmas.
And you'll be 55, right?
I'll be 95 the day after Christmas.
95 years old on December 26th. If you see Gloria in the hallway anytime, make sure to wish her a happy birthday. Happy birthday from me.
Thank you.
Let's start with a very basic question. You're about to turn 95, but this last year leading up to that milestone birthday has been one for the history books. 2020 is not one I think any of us want to relive. How
Right.
are you doing, Gloria? How are you faring during this time?
Well, I'm doing just fine. I'm staying busy. But the only thing that bothers me is that I haven't been able to hug my children in 9 months. And that, I don't like that.
How many children do you have?
I have 2. I have a daughter who lives in Durham and a son who lives in Highlands.
I'm sure they miss hugging you as much as you miss hugging them.
Well, you go like this. You go like this.
Almost kind of a namaste yogi bow.
But it's not like a hug.
It is not like a hug. Well, you have been staying extremely busy. What have you been up to?
Well, I have just finished a novel for boys, and I'm checking with my agent. I'm hoping he'll be able to sell it. I won't be able to talk to him till after Christmas because he's not available for a few weeks. But that's the main thing, and I exercise a lot, I walk a lot, I stay in condition. I stay busy.
You do stay
It's easy.
busy.
And I'm still meeting new people.
That's one thing I wanted to mention is that I said in my introduction how you're always meeting new people and going out of your way to make people feel included. And that's one of my favorite things about you. And you always seem to be in a good mood. What is your secret to staying so positive?
I think it's the secret is to keep your sense of humor. Some people I meet are very morose. They get all stuck on their physical problems, and I have plenty of those, but you kind of learn to deal with that.
That's such good advice. You have to focus more on the things that are going well.
Yes.
And not take yourself too seriously.
I see. Right.
I think that's great advice. So let's learn a little bit more about your past. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you any investigative journalistic questions and make you reveal all your secrets. We'll see. But let's start at the beginning of Gigi's glorious life. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was a city girl. And I used to spend summers in the country with my cousins and my aunts in Panasoffkee, Florida. And that's you probably never heard of Panasoffkee. It's the tiniest little town, and it's close to Orlando.
Okay.
So that'll give you an idea. And I was the oldest in a family of 4 girls. And my daddy didn't know what to do with 4 girls. And when we got to be teenagers, he didn't want us to have dates because he said he remembered how he was when he was a teenager.
He was protecting you from a younger version
Right.
of himself.
And my mother, I was a twin, and my mother had us when she was 21, and she didn't know a thing about babies. And every time the baby would spit up or cough or make a little noise, she would call her doctor. And she called him so many times, she'd call him every single day, ask him about little things. And finally he said, "Honey, don't you know some old lady that can give you some of this advice?"
You were kind of the guinea pig for your mom.
I was.
You turned out okay.
My sister and I broke them in, broke our parents in.
I'm sure by
the rest of them.
by the time your baby sister came along, you said there were 4 of you. I'm sure your mom was hardly calling the doctor at all.
By that time, she was pretty experienced.
She had learned everything
And then
she needed to know.
when we got in our teens, we had some friends, and when we were in high school, our favorite friend was, of course, my twin and I were always short. And this friend of ours was a tall, red-headed girl named Mary Ellen. And Mary Ellen would look down at us and she'd say, "Oh, y'all are so little and cute."
Were you and your sister, did y'all look identical?
We were identical.
Did you ever?
Yes. And our father always got us mixed up. And my sister's, I'm Gloria, and my sister's name was Priscilla. And he would invariably call me Priscilla, but he would call her Priscilla too. And one time when we were grown, I said, "Daddy, why didn't you ever learn to tell us apart?" And he said, "What's the difference?"
I guess maybe he thought if he called you both Priscilla, he had a 50% chance of getting it right.
That's about it.
Gosh. Well, what kind of things were you interested in as a child? I've mentioned that you're a published author and that you're a people person. What were you like as a little girl?
Oh, I always wrote little poems. I'm not a, since I've grown, I'm not a poetry person. I thought poetry was just a bunch of little rhymes, and I wrote a lot of those when I was growing up.
We need to find some of those original Gloria Glenn poetry.
I did when I got in college. I did learn. I wrote when I studied Shakespeare. I wrote a Shakespearean sonnet that turned out pretty good.
I would ask you to recite it for us, but I doubt you have it memorized.
I didn't. I don't. I couldn't say it.
Well, we'll take
it's written down somewhere. I've still got everything I wrote.
We'll take your word for it that it was a smashing success. You still have everything that you've written?
Almost, yeah. Almost everything I wrote when I was growing up.
Really?
Yeah.
What other kind of things would you write? Poetry? Did you write in a journal?
It was mostly rhymes. And when I got in college, I was going to be a poet. And a lady that I worked for when I was working my way through college, she said, "Gloria, what are you studying? What would you like to be?" And I said, "A poet." And she said, "Now you're not talking," because I didn't send her on anything except English.
Okay.
So English was my major. And when I was in college, later on, I got back in college when my children were little, and I majored in English. When I got through, when I received my BA degree, I decided I would teach because I thought I could be home with my children when they were out of school.
So you mentioned that you started college, but then you finished later after you were a mother.
Right.
What was that like?
I got married early. I was married when I was 19, and I had only done just a few courses to begin my college work. And I didn't even think about going back to school until my children were a little bit older.
Wow. So you went back to college as a mom, and you studied English.
We were living temporarily. For 7 years, we lived in Wilmington, North Carolina, because my husband worked for the railroad. And when my daughter was born, we already had 2 boys. And so we had another one, and it was a girl. I always wanted one of each. And when my daughter was born, my husband said, "She's the caboose."
Choo-choo.
And so anyway, when we lived in Wilmington, there was an old white two-story house in Wilmington that was called the Wilmington College. And that was the beginning of the college that exists now in Wilmington.
That is
Now it's a 4-year school, and they may be doing some graduate work over there too now. I don't know.
But when you went, it was a house.
It was in a house, and my daughter was 3 years old when I first started in Wilmington College, and I put her in the nursery that was across the street from the college. And the nursery was in the high school, and it was there to train the high school students in child care. And one day when I came home when I picked her up at the nursery school and took her home, I said, "Well, Lisa, how was it? How'd you get along today?" And she said, "Well, I didn't like it very much because the teacher washed my mouth out with pneumonia." And I said, and I thought, that's an awful thing to do to a child. So I went and I talked to the teacher, and she said, "Well, whenever a child says a bad word or spits or hits somebody, they get their mouth washed out with soap. And if they do it again, we wash their mouth out with vinegar. And if they do it a third time, we wash her mouth out with ammonia."
Ammonia.
So she didn't seem to mind all that much.
That is so funny. I was thinking, what? They were putting pneumonia in your child. Well, that worked out perfectly that you were able to go to the college and she could be across the street.
Yeah. Yes.
So then you had your kids, as you
And
said.
my husband helped with the housework.
As he should.
He did all the cooking, and I did the washing, he did the ironing.
So he was supportive of
He
you
was
going
very
to school.
supportive, yes.
You finished that degree as a mom with kids and a supportive husband. Congratulations. What did you do after that? You said you decided to be a teacher?
When I graduated, I was ready to work, but there were no jobs available. It was the middle of the year, and I was having a little trouble getting started. And they offered to give me a scholarship if I would teach special education. So I got a master's degree in special education.
Wow. And before that opportunity, like you said, arose because it was a strange time for hiring. Did you ever anticipate working with special ed before that?
No, never thought about it. I was going to teach English.
But you were willing to be flexible.
Yeah.
And
evidently.
How did that turn out?
I ended up teaching special ed for 9 years. And then for 8 more years, I taught English.
Wow. So almost 20 years you were a teacher.
17 years altogether.
17 years. I was trying to do the mental
Taught
math.
school. Well, you're about as good at math as I am.
Good thing you were an English teacher. Did you enjoy teaching? I think I remember you telling me once that you retired a little early from that.
Yes, I love teaching, and I love being around the children. And I taught the age that I really did enjoy. Ended up teaching 7th and 8th graders. And I enjoyed that. But by the time I had taught a good many years, the discipline was getting terrible. It was hard to discipline because a lot of the parents worked and they didn't have time to discipline their children. And when they got to school, it was all up to the teachers. I got tired of that, so I retired early.
I think that was probably the right decision. I can't imagine feeling like you have to be the teacher and the parent to those kids. What did you do after you stopped teaching?
I started writing. I wrote, did freelance work for, by that time, well, years after that, I was single. When my children were grown, I was single. And I moved to the Space Coast. We moved back down to Jacksonville with my husband's job. And after, when I was single, I remarried and moved to the Space Coast. And of course, that was Merritt Island, Florida. And I was able to see all the space shots from my backyard. And that was an exciting time for me. And then I got interested in, I wanted to do some kind of writing, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I heard that there was a job available, freelancing, doing personality profiles for Florida Today. Florida Today is owned by USA Today. In fact, in the beginning, it was the other way around. Florida Today started USA Today, and their office was in Melbourne, Florida, which was right near Merritt Island, where I lived.
Wow. So you got to kind of have this second career after you retired teaching.
Sort of. It wasn't really a career. It was just something I liked to do. I was paid, but they don't pay freelancers very much.
Okay. So,
I just enjoyed it.
well, I think that's the best reason to do anything, is because you enjoy it. I love thinking of you as a freelance writer for Florida Today, doing those personality profiles like you said, because now, full circle, you do some of those personality profiles for the Crowsdale Chatter, right?
That's right. Yes.
I bet you met a lot of interesting people doing those.
Oh, I did. I enjoyed that more than anything I'd ever done.
That's such...
For money, that is. Anything I got paid for, I enjoy that the most.
You enjoyed that more than anything else you did for money. I think that's wonderful to get to do something that you really like and get to write and do that freelance.
And my writing was so popular that people used to say, "Oh, I didn't see your column today." It wasn't a column. It was just freelance work.
You're kidding. You had so many fans. I don't doubt that for a minute.
That was fun. It's fun when people appreciate what you do.
There's no better feeling. So you started out writing poetry as a little girl, or rhymes. You went to school for English. You became a teacher, ultimately an English teacher. You did freelance writing. Then you added something else to your writing repertoire, and wrote a book, right? Tell us about your book.
I did. When you live on the Space Coast, when you live in Central Florida, you're only about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from either one of the oceans, either the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. And on the Atlantic side is the second heaviest nesting area for sea turtles in the world. The heaviest is in the Persian Gulf, and the second heaviest is right around Melbourne, Florida, up from Melbourne on up to Titusville, where the Space Center is.
So,
and I used to go out at night and watch. I would go out with friends, and we would watch the sea turtles come up and do their nesting. And I went out 2 or 3 times with a scientist who showed us how they did the research on the sea turtles. When they came up to nest, they had a big scale. They would hoist the turtle up on a scale and weigh the turtle, and then they would they'd take a what do you call it, a caliber, and measure the turtle eggs to see how big they were. And one sea turtle could lay as many as 150 to 200 or so eggs in one nest. And it would the whole process would take at least an hour.
So you and your friends got interested in watching this process of the turtles
Yes.
hatching, and that inspired you to want to write
And
about
I liked it so well that I did some more research. I found some scientific papers that I found. We had plenty of scientists that worked with turtles in Florida. And so I found some of their papers, and I read some of their books, and I put a lot of some research I did in my sea turtle book. And by the way, it's on sale in the gift shop.
I was about to say, we need to plug your book. Tell us the title.
It's called Coretta, the Top Turtle.
Coretta, the Top Turtle, can be bought in our very own Crowsdale gift shop and can also be found on Amazon. And
It's on Amazon. It's an ebook on Amazon.
so you're going to want to download that ebook or buy it in the shop, or I would recommend maybe doing both. That's the third option. So you wrote this book and got it published, which is just incredible, and I think any writer's dream. And then you got to sort of combine your love of teaching and children with your love of sea turtles and this new book. And you would travel around and talk to classes, right?
Uh-huh. I went to the public schools and I did sea turtle programs in the schools, and I would tell the children some things I knew about sea turtles and some of my experiences that wasn't in the books.
They got a behind the scenes.
And I'd have a question and answer question period after every presentation. And some of the children, especially ones in the lower grades, they would ask me some of the cutest questions.
Like what?
Well, one little second grader said, "How do they mate?" How would you answer that?
What did you say?
Well, I told them how they did it. It was easy.
You were answering more than you bargained for that day. What other questions did they ask? They sort of saw you as a superstar.
They would invariably, a question I got more than any was, how does it feel to be famous? Well, friends, you're not famous if you just write one book.
Gloria,
And you're not famous if you publish that book yourself.
I beg to differ. You are famous. You are famous to me. You are a celebrity at Crowsdale, and you deserve to have the red carpet rolled out for you. Gloria, Gigi, we cannot end this conversation without talking about something else you are known for. And I would be remiss not to bring up one of your other unique personality traits, characteristics, signatures, I'll call it, the GG signature item. And that is your pins. You wear one every day. How did that start?
Well, my twin sister was a clown, and she didn't like to wear makeup to be beautiful, but she would spend an hour to put on a clown makeup, and I would die if I had to be a clown. That wasn't something I was interested in. My sister and I were a whole lot alike, and our personalities were pretty much alike, but we sure did like different things. And she's My sister died 20 years ago. She died of cancer. And when she had our funeral, when we had a memorial service for her, she asked asked people not to bring flowers, but to put balloons on the altar. So there was a whole altar full of balloons. And at the end of the service, and she asked her clown friends to come dressed as clowns to her memorial service.
Wow.
And at the end of the service, all the clowns came down the aisle and gave hugs to everybody sitting in the church.
That's incredible. That is such a beautiful story. I know she was so special. I can't imagine having a twin sister.
And you asked me about the buttons. Well, she started giving me some buttons that she and her clown friends had collected. And the first one she gave me it said, "A hug delights, warms, and charms. That must be why God gave us arms."
One of your favorite pins.
And it said that on a pin.
And
that
you
she
still
gave
have
me.
that.
And I still have that. People kept asking me here at Crowsdale, "How many pins do you have?" And I didn't know. I'd never counted them. So I went back and counted them. I had 54 of them. And I wear one every day. And I have two guys that live down the hall from me, and every day they stop me and want to know where my pen says, and one of them always says, "What's the word for today?" and they've seen every button I've got, but they still ask me, "What does your pen say?" Even if it's a repeat of something they've seen before, and they always laugh.
I can attest to the power of your pins.
Oh.
You brought some, right? You have over 50 buttons.
54.
54 pins.
And I keep them in this box. And the box has two sections. And when I use a button from one side, I just switch it to the other side. And that's how I keep it straight, what I've worn before.
You have a system, so you're not a button repeater. Well, I love your buttons. It's one of my favorite things about you. I am also one of those people that stops you whenever I see you and says, what is the button say? It's some of the best advice I've ever gotten, some of the best jokes I've ever heard can be found right there on your button. And I just love that unique thing that you do that makes you you. I'm trying to think of a button I can get you that you don't have. I'm going to have to keep working on that.
Well, people sometimes give me buttons, but if they're not funny, I won't wear them. Like people have given me buttons like a presidential button from a presidential race way back in time somewhere, or something that doesn't even mean anything to me. So, but I won't wear it unless it's funny.
So you heard it here first. Gloria Glenn has 54 buttons, and people do always try to give you more, but they must be funny. That's the requirement. I support that. Like you said earlier in the conversation, we can't take ourselves too seriously. For those of us who are struggling to remain optimistic, especially during a challenging holiday season, what advice do you have for us to be more like you?
Don't be afraid to talk to somebody, and keep your sense of humor.
I think I need that on a button or a pin. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody.
I just recently met a lady who is fairly new at Crowsdale, and she introduced herself to me. We were out at Sparks Park one day, and we started talking, and she said, and so I said, well, some friends and I are going to get together in a few days. Would you like to join us? And she came and joined us for our meeting, and she was just so impressed. She said, nobody has reached out to me, and I've been here 5 months and nobody has reached out to me. And the next day after we met, she brought me a pot of poinsettias.
Oh, I think that's such a testament to what I said about you before, is that you connect people and you look out for people who maybe are feeling lonely, and you welcome them and you make them feel seen and heard and loved. And I hope to emulate you in that way, because it's something that is so important and has made such an impression on me. So, Gloria, is there anything else you want to add for your time here on Know Your Neighbor?
I think you squeezed about everything out of me that you possibly can get.
You can go kick your feet up now that I have dragged you on here and interrogated you. But I just want to say thank you so much for chatting with me. I hope that your 95th birthday is as joyous and special and wonderful as you are. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Know Your Neighbor. We're so glad you joined us to learn more about Gloria Glenn. If you see her in the hallway, don't forget to wish her a happy birthday and to ask her what her pin says. It will be sure to brighten your day. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Crowsdale.